No worries. Well, just a generic one to open up with, David. I mean, 2 wins and a draw from your past 5 matches, and I know it's not all about wins at this stage of your development, but that's a really encouraging turn of events.
Yeah, it is, Mark. It's a culmination, I think, of a lot of work. You know, early in the season, we went on break and came back, and the boys have worked really hard, both physically and in regards to games education as well. So I think it's been a combination of that. Probably had a few more players available as well. I mean, we've mentioned that a couple of times, I think, when you and I have chatted about having a bit more availability. So, but yeah, really encouraging to see what our last month's produced so far.
Setting aside the wins, what have you been most encouraged with, and where have you seen the most improvement from your team?
Oh, look, I think we've been really encouraged with our offence, you know, our ball movement. We've continued to build that, maybe not as risky, I think. Early on, you know, we were probably number one coming through the corridor, but we were conceding a fair bit as well. So our ability to defend that and understand probably the differences as how to attack in different, you know, sort of modes and what the game's telling you against certain opposition. So I think, you know, we've continued to improve our offence, and certainly in the manner that we'd like to be able to score. And then I think in the back end of that, we've been able to defend that ball better in the understanding of how we actually need to enter the ball. So I think, yeah, across the board, but I think it's probably offence and defence. I think our consistency with our contested ball and our stoppage work has been a pretty good staple for us for the most part of the year.
How big a step was it to actually be able to put that stuff together against West Coast on the road? Such a tough environment over there.
Yeah, I think it's significant, Shane. You know, I think I mentioned post game that it's, you know, I still think they're the number one toughest, you know, road trip away. There's still a couple of others that are, you know, pretty close behind them, but I think it was the consistency of what we did through the 4 quarters. I think if you went back and looked at our quarter by quarter scenario, we were able to get things on our term the 3rd quarter, but I thought we hung in there in the 1st, 2nd particularly well, and then we were able to have that arm wrestle in the last quarter. So I think the consistency of that 4 quarter effort was what we were the most pleased with.
So how's this week been? Have the guys got a bit of a lift on the back of that again? And how's it been in terms of the actual travel up to Queensland and having to deal with more uncertainty and that sort of stuff?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, all you can do is deal with the info that you have at hand. You know, we got back, had the day off on the Wednesday, rolled into work, and we were on the road again. So that's okay. You know, we've just got to pick up our training and still, you know, we're still able to get on grounds and do what we normally do. So we haven't missed out on any particular components of our training. Yeah, look, I think our guys have had some real energy and some spark in them for probably 4 or 5 weeks now. So I don't think that this week's been any real difference. I think what we're trying to make sure our players understand that win or lose, you need that calm, consistent approach, and that's, you know, I think that's what good organisations do. They're pretty methodical with how they go about it. You know, we certainly enjoyed the win in that sort of first 24 hours, and then we've got to move on to the Bombers.
David, I know probably a bit of a strange one, but I just would love to get your take on it. Is there any sort of pact within the playing group, as coaching staff, to get off the bottom? Like, is there any sort of, we don't want to be on the bottom and, you know, we're going to make this happen?
Yeah, it's a good question, mate. We haven't sat down as a group and used that as, you know, as an opportunity to say, look, that's not where we want to finish. We've probably just tended to look at how we can continue to make ourselves better each week, and with that, you know, results tend to come, which we're now seeing. I think if you asked anyone within our organisation, we don't want to finish down the bottom. You know, so where the next few weeks takes us, mate, I think we're just excited that each week we can get out, continue to try and improve and take on whoever, you know, sort of comes our way, and be able to understand how we continue to develop, you know, our game style as it stands now.
The club sort of approach in terms of players putting family first, like Ben Cunnington, or other players choosing to go on the road. How did you approach that? And I assume it's a family first type situation.
Sure is, Shane. Both staff and players, you know, it was very much around you need to take this next, you know, hour to consider, you know, what's the best for you, what's the best option for you and your family. And then if you decide to come, then, here's what we need you to do. You need to go home, get packed, organised, with pets and bits and pieces and, families with kids at school and Melbourne potentially looking at going into a lockdown. So fundamentally, I think, in our organisation, it's looking after the individual first and foremost. And then we'll still get on with the group that we've got. So, I know Ben's probably, more a profile person, but there's certainly other members of our staffing group that, made the correct decision to stay at home and support their family as well.
How long have you packed for?
Good question. I've packed for an indefinite time, so I've got lots of jocks and socks and tees. We were told anywhere from sort of 4 or 5 days to maybe a few weeks. So I think when we did our initial briefing was like, here's what we know. Here's probably the outcome that we think. So plan on the basis that you'll be away more than less. And then on that basis, you need to make the decision for the support of what you need for you as an individual or your family. So look, we'd sort of packed potentially for probably 3 weeks. Still not sure. It's moving all the time. I mean, it's moves last night, it moves this morning. I just know that I've got to get on the bus tomorrow and go down to Metricon, and we're playing at 12:30, and Brady and Jamie and Laura can look after the rest.
And just back on Ben again, David,
Yep.
What's the indication of what he does if you are to stay, let's say, beyond this week and you have to play again interstate next week? Do you expect to have him? And what about some of these other staff members that didn't come up?
Yeah, it's an unknown quantity, I think, Mark, with restrictions, governments closing borders and that. So we'll just have to work through it as we get through each week. Look, it'd be nice to play and get home. If that's the case, then they obviously become available again. If we're still interstate, then we'll just have to work through whether or not there's exemptions available and all that type of thing. So it becomes pretty complicated once you get through. But I think give us the next 24, 48 hours. By the time we get to the end of the game tomorrow, we'll probably have, at least we hope we'll have an idea as to what's going on.
And I imagine you're keen to keep, I guess, the identities to private on who didn't come up with the staff members. But were they coaches? Have you got a full complement of coaches, or have you had to sort of reshuffle and get people in different roles to cover different things?
No, most of our grouping are here. There's just a selection of people that, due to other circumstances, that aren't able to come. We've pretty much got a full crew as far as coaching goes. But there's a few other support staff that needed to make that decision. And look, and we feel for our Melbourne members again, back into a lockdown. We were supposed to be back at Marvel having crowds. We've been able to get a few members in Tassie. We've been able to get a few of our WA members there last week. So we're really feeling for our members in Melbourne, and the ones that are in Sydney as well, obviously. But just bloody difficult circumstances. So our thoughts are with them all at the moment.
One of those times you're probably glad you're not a footy boss anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, very good. And the Bombers, can we just get you to give us a bit of a comment on them? They've been a pretty exciting team this year, probably performed above expectations in a lot of ways. They're a dangerous team to come up against. Yeah,
they are. There's no doubt they've got some run, haven't they, off that half-back area. We know that if we're not accountable in the midfield, they can really hurt you and get the ball moving in that forward end really, really quickly. So we need to be on our mettle. We certainly think we've got some better layers of our offence and defence in position now to maybe deal with that, so to give them a better run for their money. They're a dangerous team, and if we're not on, they can certainly counter-attack on you really quickly. And certainly put some scoreboard pressure on in a really quick space of time.
On Goldstein, David, broke the Aaron Sandland's record for the most hit-outs last week. Obviously been a great player for a long time. What's he meant for you as one of the senior players this year to help bring the younger group through this season? Yeah,
it was a phenomenal achievement, Shane, wasn't it? To have that many. I think he's averaged over 30, hit-outs per game if you go back and look at it across the board. So it's a phenomenal record. I think what I've loved about Goldie, and not only about, I think, Goldie, but the other leaders, but if you're talking specifically about Todd, willing to improve and learn new elements of his game. You know, we've challenged him in certain areas as we have with all of our senior more mature guys. So I think Anthony Rocker's been terrific for him, you know, in supporting him in, you know, in that ruck area, looking at, you know, how we can sort of work around different techniques. I think he's been terrific for Rex and Tom Campbell. I think the three of those guys as a ruck group work really well together. So I've just loved the fact that he's embraced that challenge, and he's got a willingness to improve his game, you know, at where he is in the stage of his career. So massive tick for him.
Another individual I wanted to ask about, Brayden Hayden. Where's he at the moment with his body?
Yeah, so Ronnie's had a couple of weeks back. So he's got a bit of general soreness. We were hoping that he might have been ready for another VFL game this week, but it looks like he'll have to miss this week with some general body soreness. But yeah, he's certainly been around the mark. He's had that unfortunate, you know, littered history this year of getting up. He's had a couple of weeks back. So we just need to sort of spell him for this week, and we hope that, you know, depending on where we're at next week, mate, but he's certainly around the mark, I think, with you know, with selection over the next couple of weeks.
Another one on an individual, David.
Yep.
It might be my last one from me. Tyron Thomas.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of expectation coming in as a top 10 pick. A few years into the system now. He's really coming along beautifully. I imagine you'd be thrilled with his progress.
Yeah, I have, Mark. He's worked really hard at his game. You know, he's a very smart, you know, young man in understanding the caper really well. It's probably taken him the first half of the year just for us to sort of push him along in regards to that level of intensity, the work rate. You know, we've given him the opportunity to come in and learn the midfield craft, and no better to learn, you know, from Ben and Jai. So two really experienced campaigners in there for him that have, you know, taken him under their wing. So from that side of things, we've been really pleased. I think the other aspect is that he's also been able to still be quite a dangerous forward, mate, when he goes, you know, in that forward rotation as well. He's still been able to have scoreboard pressure on. So, but yeah, look, his quality of his possessions are really good. His work rate's now up at the level that we think lets him play in the midfield more often, and we've been extremely pleased with what he's done.